Hello guys, so here I have a law of cosines and law of sines example, and I picked this problem to show you a common mistake that can happen if you're not paying close attention to what you're solving for first. Now this problem has all three sides given to us, so we're going to have to use the law of cosines, and let's just jot that down so that we have that to look at. So the law of cosines is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times the cosine of a. All right, now I always tell my students to find the biggest angle first because it's their choice. We have all three sides, so we have to find an angle. So I would instruct them to find the biggest angle first, which would be angle A, because it's across from 6, which is the biggest side. And I'll tell you why in just a minute. So if we start to solve for angle A, then we would be plugging in 6 squared equals 4 squared plus 3 squared minus 2 times 4 times 3 times cosine of A, and then I get 36. And then that's 16 plus 9 right there, and that would be 25. And then this part right here, we have minus, that's 8 times 3, so 24 cosine of A. Now also, do not be tempted to subtract those two numbers and change it to 1 cosine of A. Do not do that. It's not true. It's not accurate to do that. What we have to do is subtract 25, and that gives us 11 equals negative 24 cosine of A. Divide both sides, and then we'll have cosine of A equals negative 11/24, and then we'll do cosine inverse of negative 11/24 in our calculator to get the measurement, which is 117.28 degrees. So that is angle A. All right, so we're good to go. And then most students like to switch over to the law of sines at this point. They just usually prefer the law of sines to go forward and find either angle B or angle C. Whichever, it doesn't matter whichever one you find of those two first. So let's just say we're going to find angle B. All right, so I will set up the sine of B over 4 equals, and let's jot down A into our picture, 117.28. So that will equal the sine of 117.28 over 6. And we can solve this. I could just multiply both sides by 4, because then sine of B will be alone. So sine of B equals 0.593. So then I'll just do sine inverse of 0.593 in the calculator, and that equals 36.3 degrees, which is angle B. So we can put that in our picture, 36.3 degrees, and then we can just subtract the two angles from 180 to get angle C. So 180 minus 117.28 minus 36.3. That will give us angle C. So I did that in the calculator, and it is 26.2. And that is angle C. And we can stick that in our picture, and then that whole triangle is solved. Now I'm going to show you why solving for the biggest angle first using the law of cosines is so important. Let's look back here. For our first answer, we had this highlighted number. Angle A was 117.28 degrees. Now let's imagine that we didn't find angle A first, and we waited until this step over here to find angle A using the law of sines. Well, the problem is, when we would get down to a step that would say, like, sine inverse of whatever, I'll do it on the next page so that you can see all the steps. But when you do the sine inverse of anything in these problems, it's not going to tell you an obtuse angle. So it would not tell you 117.28 for angle A, even though we know that's what angle A is. And that's because sine inverse in the calculators only tells you answers between 0 and 90, because those are in the first quadrant. And it's up to us to remember that, oh yeah, sine inverse can also be positive in the second quadrant of the unit circle. But that's a lot to think through and to remind yourself of in the middle of a problem. So to avoid all of that, I just tell students, find the largest angle first using the law of cosines, and then you're free to switch over and use the law of sines for any of the other angles that you want to find. And the third angle you can always find by subtracting the first two from 180. Okay, so I'm going to take you through and just show you what happens on this page here if we don't find the biggest angle first. So let's say I just chose to find angle C first instead of angle A. So I would still have to use the law of cosines. So I would have 3 squared equals 4 squared plus 6 squared minus 2 times 4 times 6 cosine of C. So 9 equals, this is 16 plus 36, which is 52, minus these three together. 8 times 6 is 48. Cosine of C. Subtract this 52 to the other side. So negative 43 equals negative 48 cosine of C. Divide both sides by negative 48. So now we can do cosine inverse of negative 43 over negative 48 in the calculator, and let's see what we get. And you get 26.38 degrees equals angle C. It's just slightly off from the answer on the front page because of the rounding that we did on the front page of the problem. But that is angle C, and that is correct. There's nothing wrong with that answer. But what will be wrong is our next answer. So let's say I shift over to find angle A, which we know should be the biggest angle because it's across from 6. So I can do law of sines now, which is what everybody usually gravitates towards because you guys all prefer the law of sines. 26.38. So the sine of 26.38 over 3 equals the sine of A over 6. And so to solve for A, I just multiply by 6 on both sides. And use our calculator to see what that is. And we get 0.889 equals the sine of A. So then if I do sine inverse of 0.889, I did that in my calculator and I got 62.7 degrees, which would be angle A. But we know from the work we did on the front page that that is not true. So I just copied and pasted the triangle from the front page right up here in this corner. So we know that this is the correct solution to this triangle. And down here, the answer we just got for A is not the correct answer, and it's because A is an obtuse angle. It's the largest angle of this particular triangle, and it is obtuse. Sine inverse gave us the supplement, which is 62.7. So if we were actually doing this problem in this manner, then we'd have to realize this at this point and take 180 minus 62.7 and get the proper answer for A, and which we know is 117.28, or let's just round for this problem, so 117.3, and then from there we could find angle B. So to avoid all of this from happening to you, you could just follow this rule. So it makes it simple, and as long as you understand why you're doing it, that's the important thing. So law of sines, or law of cosines. When you're finding an angle, you want to find the largest angle first. Then you can find any of the remaining angles using the law of sines. Or one other option that you would have is to just use the law of cosines the whole entire time and not switch over. But most of my students that I tutor like to switch over to the law of sines. But let's just put that little caveat in here. Or just use law of cosines to find both the first and the second angles. And then you could just subtract from 180 to get that final angle. That would also eliminate any problems that could come up. And so this is just what I wanted to show you.